Carmel Holmes, a filmmaker, writer, the founder of Black Star Projects, and the host of the podcast Many Lumens. Maori has organized programs in film at Anthology Film Archives, ICA Philadelphia, Museum of Contemporary Art Los Angeles, the Underground Museum, and the Whitney Museum of American Art. Her film and video works have screened internationally, including Seen Not Heard, Women in Philadelphia Hip Hop. Her writing has appeared in publications like Documentary Magazine, The Believer, and Film Quarterly, among others. In 2023, Maori was announced as a recipient of the United States Artist Beresford Prize and as a Philadelphia Cultural Treasures Fellow. In 2022, she was named as one of the Kennedy Center's Next 50 list. Maori received her MFA in film from Temple University, her BA in history from American University, and received formative training at Howard University. She was previously named a Doc NYC documentary new leader, included in Essence Magazine's Woke 100, served as a Ford Foundation Just Films Rockwood Fellow, and was a Flaherty Film Seminar Fellow. Please join me in welcoming Maori Carmel Holmes.
Good morning. I'm going to try to figure out how to use this. Okay, so I have two videos. The first is the land acknowledgement video that we use at the festival that we have been using 2022 and 2023. It will be updated, but I wanted to share that just as a grounding in our values. And then after that, I believe it is a year-end video about our work.
Black Star was founded in Philadelphia
in a lineage of global anti-colonial struggle
on land which has been stewarded by the Lenni Lenape people for centuries.
We call in our Black, Indigenous, and Brown ancestors
who bent time and envisioned a freer, more tender world for us, one that we continue to reach for.
We honor all Indigenous peoples and their lands and acknowledge the ongoing genocide and displacement of Indigenous and Black communities.
Merely naming the people of this land is not an act of repair, nor is it a form of decolonization.
After all, decolonization is an unsettling thing.
We use this reminder as an opening
to consider ongoing self-determination movements of colonized people across the world.
From Palestine to Puerto Rico and everywhere in between.
The violence inflicted on our communities is immeasurable and irreparable.
Still, we gather in the spirit of generous and joyful exchange and other cultural expression.
As Tony Cade Bambara has shown us, through cultural work, we create space for imagination,
critique,
gathering,
pleasure,
love,
and radical care.
We often say if we run out of foundation funding, we're available as a creative agency if you want to hire us. So thank you so much. I just wanted to, Black Star is partly focused on nonfiction filmmaking, so I'm a little uncomfortable in this section because we focus on other things, but we definitely have a strong nonfiction focus in our staff, but also in the programs that we do. I think if you've ever seen any of the things, because it's independent filmmakers, so much of that is nonfiction. But one of our leading values is liberation, and so that's sort of how we begin all of our conversations, that is the goal of what we're doing at Black Star Projects. I started the festival in 2012 as a curatorial project. I was interested in screening films of the African diaspora in Philadelphia, which is where I was at the time. And all of a sudden, 1,500 people came, and they were like, when is the next one? And so we launched a film festival. For the first 8 editions, it was a part-time side project, took up all of my evenings, weekends, and vacation time. I had very big day jobs and did this festival on the side. And then in 2020, we launched Black Star Projects as the parent organization and then launched other programs along with it. So the festival will be coming up on its 13th edition this August. Thank you. And we now have 21 full-time staff, which is very frightening. So these are some photos from those early days. This is, we have many projects. This person here, Tashay Williams, is, I think, very emblematic of the Black Star trajectory. She started with us as an intern when she was a student at the University of Pennsylvania, and she's now running her own film studio. And this was her directing our television, our talk show project. During the pandemic, we launched a talk show to kind of connect audiences to the festival, and so she was our floor director for that. One of the things that I've been interested in, and the rest of us working on Black Star, is when we launched in 2012, Afrofuturism was one of the big buzzwords that was going around, and so everyone was talking about the future, the future, the future. And I had been trained by my mom and by, my pretend aunties and all of the people around me that you can't talk about the future without talking about the past. And so another one of our guiding principles is Sankofa, which is something that I didn't really know until I saw Haile Garima's film, like way too young, and then had to look up the term and think about it. But it's definitely something that is guiding us philosophically, but also in our work. We want to focus on the current directors, who are hot and popping, but we also try to really engage with our elders in the audiences, in our the content that we show. We're really interested in kind of resurrecting interest in certain repertory films, particularly those. I love how Natalie set up the ancestors that she claims, because we also do that. And so one of the main inspirations for me, my mom took us to a lot of cultural festivals growing up, but one that sticks with me is the National Black Arts Festival in Atlanta. And I think about so much how there was always this engagement between the past and the present. The name of Black Star, as I said, started out as an African diaspora film festival. And when we were trying to figure out the name of it, my good friend, Dr. Yaba Blay, who is Ghanaian American, she was like, well, you should name it Black Star. And that was partly self-serving because Ghanaians use Black Star for almost everything. It's the center of their flag, it's the name of the football team. But that comes from Kwame Nkrumah's, Pan-African ideas, also coming from Marcus Garvey with the UNIA and the Black Star line as this emblem of self-determination and sovereignty. And so Yaba made the recommendation that we name the festival that, which was great to me because I was like, well, people understand that it is Pan-African and a diaspora project, but also thinking about film and the art of light, thinking about this futurism, thinking about all of these things that sort of like fit, and we made it a compound word and it stuck. And even now, the festival has widened to focus on all people of color, which was driven largely by a lot of the programmers who were working with me, most of whom, even as non-Black people of color, were still grounded in Black liberation politics. And so it still works as the title, as our name. People at the festival. Something that we're also thinking about as an organization, and I hate to say this in a room full of people that I also hope support me, but we are hope that eventually we don't have to do this work. We started the festival to highlight filmmakers that we feel are overlooked, and to support filmmakers that we think are not being supported in the right ways. Eventually, as most nonprofits should be, we should be working ourselves out of a job, right? And sometimes we get lost along the way. And I think that might be a long time. Things have changed even in the 13 years of doing this work. There was like a swell of interest, and then racism got solved in 2020, and here we are, back in a moment where positions that were created 2 years ago have evaporated, support systems have evaporated, and so we find the work super, super important and urgent once again. And so, just sort of going through the ups and downs of that kind of support, but I hope it is our goal that eventually this work will be in the mainstream and you won't need Black Star necessarily. Maybe you'll want it, but hopefully you won't need it. Our mission is to create the spaces and resources needed to uplift the work of Black, Brown, and Indigenous artists working outside the confines of genre. We've been very specific in our language. I have been very influenced by the Black and Brown women of the 70s working on environmental issues who use people of color as an emboldening and inclusive term. But we don't say people of color all the time, or BIPOC, because we're trying to be global. And so these words mean different things in other places. So we use Black, Brown, and Indigenous, hoping that that is the most inclusive, knowing that we might miss the mark. But if you're in Nairobi, if you're in Mexico, these things all mean something different. So we've been trying to be the most inclusive. One of the things that we were interested in doing from the very beginning was being interested in authorship and not just representation. There are a lot of culturally specific festivals in our country, and most of them are concerned with representation, which is necessary. One of the things that I wanted to do with Black Star, particularly at the beginning, if there is any privilege in being African American or being Black, it is that we have just a little bit more representation than other groups of color. Still not enough, it's still not nuanced, but we had just a little bit more. And so I didn't feel like I had to make this festival about representation. We could go beyond that. We could start to think about, what can this do? How can we tell these stories differently? And thinking about early conversations that a filmmaker, like if you've ever seen Arthur Jafa talk, he's always like, what is Black cinema? How do we actually bend and shape this form? And that has been a guide for us. We've been interested in the aesthetics of projects and not focused on celebrity, sometimes to our own detriment. We're interested in supporting an artist of color community. We see artists as our audience first, so we're really there for the filmmakers, and then we go outward. And then the other thing that we're guided by is curating high quality and accessible programs. Especially thinking about the ways in which there's so much content, people don't know where to go, and so one of the things we hope we can be is a channel and a guide. So the festival is the first project. It happens every first week in August. It's been 5 days, we're going back down to 4. It takes place in Philadelphia, and you should come. I'll just leave it at that. We have all the things a festival has. We have screenings, we have panels, we have parties, and we do a pitch contest, and I'm running out of time, so I'm just gonna go through the rest of the projects. We have our William and Louise Greaves Filmmaker Seminar, which is actually starting today at Stanford University. It's an opportunity for filmmakers, and it's kind of like our nerd boot camp for filmmakers and critics and scholars to get together and do a deep dive into filmmaking. We have our Philadelphia Filmmaker Lab, which is actually focused on narrative projects, but we executive produce 4 short films from Philadelphia-based filmmakers. We have Scene, which is our journal of film and visual culture. It comes out twice a year. It is meant to focus on critics of color, as well as focusing on work by filmmakers and artists of color. We have our podcast, Many Lumens, which I host. D-Lo in the Room has been one of our guests. It is focused on artists and cultural workers who are working at the intersection of art, social justice, and popular culture. We do exhibitions. This is a still from, you saw the footage of Terrence Nance's exhibition at the ICA last year. We also have year-round programs that we do in partnership with museums and other institutions around the country. And so our values, you can see on our website. I'm just going to run through them very quickly. Building community. Care is really, really important. Intersectionality. Liberation. We consider ourselves reparative. One of my favorite things about our land acknowledgement is that he was 8 at the time, my 8-year-old godson said irreparable the first time on the first take. Rigor is also a really important value to us. Solidarity. And Jerry, I see you in the room. There's Jerry right there. This is just the audience at the festival. These are some of our goals. More access, solidarity with movements for social justice, and just creating more opportunities for artists to practice. I feel like particularly in the film discipline, it's really challenging to make space for practice. And so we're trying to do that as much as possible. We're also interested in small ways in shifting how nonprofits work. And if you're interested in that, I can talk to you about that later. And yeah, I'm just gonna run through. These are some of the films that have played at the festival that I think are emblematic of the work that we're really interested in. This is from a panel at the 2020 festival when we were fully virtual. Noitama Bodomo gave the keynote at our first Grieve seminar, and then we reprinted that conversation in an issue of Scene. If you don't know her work, she's brilliant and amazing, and to me, like a superstar. This is from an earlier festival when we were at a different venue. So I will end there. Thank you very much.